Today we're looking at a guy called Michael Knowles. Apparently he's some kind of a political guy, not a political video, of course, that's not my thing. If you like this guy's politics or you don't like this guy's politics, go nuts, have fun. Do what you like. I'm here because he's making arguments about atheism.
Professor Jacob has found some atheist Reddit tier videos to
What the hell was that? That's shaking. What was that even supposed to mean?
get our brains firing.
You said in a speech famously that I think a case can be made that faith is one of the world's great evils, comparable to the smallpox virus, but harder to eradicate.
I do think that, yes. Because what I'm talking about there is faith, where faith means belief in something without evidence.
Oh my god. So is this what we're doing with the editing in this video? Random stuff is going to happen every 5 seconds to retain the attention of an audience with the attention span of a goldfish?
Because if you believe something without evidence, then that justifies anything. You're no longer vulnerable to somebody coming back at you and saying, hang on a minute, let me argue the case. If you believe it without evidence, which is what faith is, then you don't argue the case. You say, no, I'm not arguing that case. This is my faith. It's mine. It's private. I don't dissent from it. I don't retreat from it. You're just going to have to accept it. Now, that is evil.
Okay, to me that's very, very hyperbolic, especially calling it evil at the end. Yeah, it's kind of dumb, especially the way Dawkins described it there. And I think the way he described it tossed in a lot of extra stuff that doesn't necessarily come along with believing on faith. A refusal to argue the case, or to dissent from aspects of your belief, or to back off from it when you're shown to be wrong. Of course, these are things a lot of people do, and some varieties of religion encourage that sort of thing. But I think these are things people do in addition to believing on faith. These aren't what believing on faith actually is. So Dawkins, no, way too over the top on this.
Yes, I said that pork chops are...
Your Dawkins impression is horrible. That is not his accent. Not saying I could do that much better on the fly, though. Also, your editor edited a pork chop hitting the window. It's not funny, it's just pointless and irritating. It's an extra sound effect that distracts me from what you're saying.
the slimiest, most hard-shelled things in the world.
Yeah, that's not even close to Dawkins, man. That's way too posh. It's closer to like, maybe Stephen Fry or somebody. I'm trying to think of who I'm thinking of, if that makes sense.
By which, I mean, by pork chops, I mean lobster tails. Yes. When I say pork chops, I mean lobster tails. And that is why my argument that they're slimy and hard-shelled is so persuasive.
Okay, so you have a boomer editor trying to do frenetic zoomer editing, is what's going on. I gotta admit, I procrastinated a lot when I decided I had to do this video. This video, just stylistically, is the most annoying thing I've responded to in a very long time. It's so bad.
It's true, if you start with a false premise, then you can... Ironically, it's kind of the point that he thinks he's making, but he's actually demonstrating his point. If you start with a false premise, yeah, you can end up just about anywhere.
Here we go again.
But he has a false premise. The premise that...
So you're accusing Dawkins of having a false premise. I guess the premise of the definition of the word faith, according to him. And so you put in some random bullshit from Godzilla, of Godzilla smashing a building. It's meaningless garbage. What is it supposed to communicate? What is it supposed to contribute? If you want to argue the point, just sit there and argue the point. You're already on camera. You don't need to add more stuff. You or your editor or both of you probably think this appeals to the youth or something. You're so out of touch, it's unbelievable.
Faith is believing something without evidence. That's not what faith is.
Well, it's at least one definition of the word faith, and it's a useful one too. In my experience, and I'm sure probably Dawkins's, faith is what people retreat to once they run out of arguments. It's the bedrock of religious belief. The people who watch my channel know perfectly well how often in arguments the religious tip their hands and show that for all their pretensions of believing for all these arguments, like, oh, I believe because of the ontological argument or the Kalam cosmological argument or whatever, those are all actually just post hoc rationalizations. And the real reason is just faith, supported by nothing. It was just indoctrinated in at some point, and that's the whole reason. But you know, I get it. That's not a compelling argument. I'm preaching to the deconverted here. Anyway, you prefer some other definition of the word faith. Yeah, of course you do. Let's have it.
Faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things unseen.
Right. Unseen as in you don't see any actual evidence for them. There are plenty of things that are literally unseen that you don't have to take on faith. The sound of a car going by, the smell of fresh-baked cookies. No, when you say it's the evidence of things unseen, what you mean is it's the evidence of things that have no other evidence supporting them. It's belief without evidence. That covers the second half of what you said, but the first part is equally interesting, if not more so.
Substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things unseen.
The substance of things hoped for, by which is meant basically the thing that assures you that what you hope for is real. Substance, I guess, more in the sense of how you substantiate a claim. You hope it's real, you're motivated to want to believe that it's real, so you believe that it's real just because, and that's supposed to count as evidence that it is in fact real in the absence of any other evidence. This defines faith the same way Dawkins did, except it also points out that you're strongly motivated to want to believe this thing in particular. I don't know how you thought saying this was going to show that Dawkins wasn't right.
Substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things unseen. That's true. Let's take it even further.
No, let's stop and think about what you just said for a second. Because once you realized you were going to say it, you kind of sped through it. You really sped up your speaking all of a sudden. And then you went, that's true. And then you cut and start talking about something else. Well, okay, yeah, if that's true that that's what faith is, then Dawkins is right. You're just going to toss that out there and not acknowledge it? Okay.
Theology is faith-seeking understanding.
I understand.
And
stop it. You insert this random clip from this random shitty movie and I forget what you're actually saying. It's so distracting. I don't know, maybe that's the point. All right, I gotta replay what you said and then stop before the Batman part.
Theology is faith-seeking understanding.
Well, no, it's not faith doing anything. It's people doing something. People with faith, who believe on faith. Seeking understanding, yes, I can agree with that. They believe in God, but they don't necessarily understand all the details of it. And so they argue with each other about what the details are and why those should be the details. It's basically the same thing as like Lord of the Rings fans arguing with each other about background details of the story that aren't explicitly stated or maybe seem contradictory or interpretable in some other way. And they also want to understand how to justify their belief to the wider world. Hence all the post-hoc rationalizations.
What it means is it begins actually from logic.
Oh, come on. Theology begins with logic, not with belief in God or the gods or whatever.
And then it encounters evidence in revelation, and then it applies the rigors of reason and logic to both.
Okay, so it starts with logic, not with belief in God, apparently. You just start logicking all over the place. Then you encounter facts, evidence, in revelation, which I assume means special revelation and natural revelation. I think that's the way you're using it. So looking at the natural world at all only comes into play after the logic part. So I guess who knows what you were logicking about. And then you take reason and logic, and you apply them to logic and to the revelation to demonstrate the thing that you already believed on faith. And I know you already believed it on faith because this is theology that you're describing. You're trying to explain what theology is, and you defined theology as faith-seeking understanding.
Theology is faith-seeking understanding.
So faith precedes theology. It pre-exists it. It's a thing faith does, which means it also pre-exists the application of logic to logic and evidence. Faith comes before the evidence. Again, this is supposed to show that Dawkins is wrong, and yet what you say keeps lining up with what Dawkins said.
That's what it is.
Cool. Then why are you arguing about it?
So, for instance, the existence of God can be known with certainty from the natural light of human reason, by the natural light of human reason, from the created world.
Oh, is that another one of those unseen things that you hope is true? You know, the claim here is, I cannot possibly be wrong. I know every possible thing that could possibly ever make me wrong, and the number of those things in all of reality is 0, which has to be a claim to omniscience unless you're claiming to rely on the omniscience of God, in which case it's circular because you're using your feeling of certainty that God exists to justify your feeling of certainty that God exists. Either way, it's such a nonsense claim that it collapses basically unassisted.
The existence of God can be known with certainty from the natural light of human reason, by the natural light of human reason from the created world.
So you can know it with absolute certainty by applying reason to the created world. Okay, it's even worse than I thought then, because now it's just you looking around and going, I don't know, God must have made this. I can't think of any other possibility. Now I'm absolutely certain, and there's no possibility of anything else being true. Fuck you. Which, by the way, justifies the other part of what Dawkins said, that you don't dissent from it and you don't back down from it, and you don't engage in arguments about it, at least with yourself, because that's what absolute certainty does. It makes you overly confident, arrogant, closed to other possibilities. Because after all, if you feel like the question has been answered with finality, with absolute certainty, then you don't have to think about it ever again. There's no point. You don't have to ask questions. You don't have to notice problems. If you do notice any little seeming problems, you can just hand wave them away by going, no, I already decided that with certainty. And of course, that's what Dawkins was describing when he called it evil, because this is what leads to that kind of hard-headedness that makes people unable to deal with reality on its terms, or to really meaningfully deal with other people. Now again, I really disagree with Dawkins. This is not a faith thing as such, although of course it can be a later consequence of faith. No, it's certainty that's the problem. And of course that doesn't mean there's any problem with having strong beliefs, a strong position on this is true and that is not. It means that problems start to arise when you're unwilling to consider the possibility that you might be wrong, because you've preemptively denied that possibility. It's a denial of your human fallibility. It's the denial of one of the most important truths in a human life. I still wouldn't call it evil, though. I still think that was way over the top. It's just really dumb and unhelpful and not useful.
We can know for a fact that God exists, because if objects are in motion, there must be an unmoved mover at the end of the line that started all the motion.
All right, that's an assumption on your part. A lot of assumptions stacked on top of each other, in fact, about the nature of the universe, of time, of motion, of matter and energy, all kinds of stuff. And you're claiming that based on your assumption about how the universe and all of reality works, you can be absolutely certain there is absolutely no possibility that you could be wrong under any circumstances, because you assume that you have perfect, infallible insight into the deepest, most fundamental nature of reality. It's bold, I'll give you that.
Because if causes have effects, then there must be, at the end of the line, I suppose you'd say at the beginning of the line of all that, an uncaused cause.
Yeah, that's basically the same thing as what you just said. I guess I can give you basically the exact same response. Rewind a little bit.
If there is such a thing as perfection in the world,
I have no idea what that would mean other than some aspect of the world conforming to your standards, your tastes and preferences. It's something conforming, objectively, mind you, to your subjectively developed personal standard. And this is why arguments about perfection and beauty and morality are all really the same argument, because they're always just about you.
if there is such a thing as perfection in the world, then there must be a highest good, whom we call God.
Wait, so if you see something in the world as perfect, then there has to be something else that's like more highly perfectly perfect. Why? You already said there's a thing that's perfect. You can point to a perfection in the world. If it's perfect, it's already as perfect as it can get. Otherwise, it's not perfect. But the perfect thing you point to isn't God. Oh man, look at this cauliflower I just grew. That's perfect. Okay, is the cauliflower God? No. Does there have to be something more perfectly cauliflowery than the cauliflower for the cauliflower to exist? No. You're talking nonsense.
I'm God.
Yeah, I know there was a movie where that guy played God. What does that have to do with what you're talking about? How does that enhance the point?
Oh my God, he's God.
Okay, apparently there was also an episode of Sitcom where somebody said the word God. Okay, and?
That doesn't say that the Christian religion can be understood by the light of natural human reason from the created world.
Yeah, I know. That's a whole other thing that you're going to have to take on faith.
There's a role of revelation here as well.
And now I assume we're just talking specifically about special revelation, the Bible. I can follow what you're saying, but it sounds strange when you use that word in multiple different ways in the same video.
But that's not without evidence.
I mean, it's not without evidence. I would say that the fact that people wrote these stories as if they were true somewhat increases the probability that they're true. It's just that the amount that it does is so insignificant that it doesn't matter. It's no different from any other random person telling you any other random thing that you don't believe. It's anecdotal evidence, and not even first-hand anecdotal evidence. It's very likely written down secondhand at best. You guys love to act like the Bible is this glorious, glittering library of evidence that stretches on for miles, when in reality it's just this sad little scrap.
You know, the existence of Jesus Christ is one of the best evidenced things in all of human history.
Okay, look, if you want to say something like, more biblical scholars believe that Jesus probably existed than biblical scholars who don't believe that, fine. But come on, one of the best evidenced things in all of human history? That's a flat-out lie. Now, of course, whether Jesus existed or not isn't really the point, because Christianity isn't about Jesus existed. Christianity is about very specific claims about Jesus that have to be backed up on their own. Yeah, if somebody proved pretty conclusively that Jesus did not exist at all, then that would be a major problem for Christianity. But if somebody proved pretty conclusively that Jesus did exist, that wouldn't really say much at all about Christianity. Like, oh, the guy that they say started the religion existed, so now it's in the same camp as Mormonism, Scientology, Islam, Baha'i, Raelianism. Okay, so what is that supposed to say about the truth of the actual religion?
The spread of Christianity is pretty good evidence of the truth of Christianity.
No, that is terrible evidence. Religions spread. Islam spread, and is spreading faster than Christianity. If you use this argument, then in not many years' time, when they're the biggest religion, they're going to turn around and use the same argument against you, and it will mean just as much. If you assign this argument value, you're giving ammunition to another religion to take your place. Hinduism spread, Buddhism spread. And of course, it's not like Christianity just spread by miraculous interference. It spread by very well-known, well-documented human means, primarily politics. It's one of the religions that managed to get bigger for the time being because of historical circumstance. If it wasn't Christianity, it would be some other one. When you got competing ideologies, in certain times and in certain places, one of them or the other is going to be more successful. It's not surprising that it is this way. It would be surprising if it were not this way.
The fact that there were 500 eyewitnesses to the resurrection.
Oh, you mean that one throwaway line in that one letter that's just like, yeah, 500 people saw him anyway. These are your three best pieces of evidence for Christianity? These are the three you brought up first? This video is so bad.
The fact that the life of Christ is attested to in religious sources.
Seriously?
But also in non-religious sources as well.
Yeah, like way later, some guy writes, yeah, there's this religion and it's about this guy called Jesus. Yeah, I say that too. That doesn't mean he existed. Doesn't mean I have any special insight into whether he did or not. But again, if Jesus existed, cool. Now we know something else about history, but we still don't know anything new about the supernatural claims of Christianity, which is the point. You're arguing that that part is true, not just that there was a guy.
The fact that these apostles went to all the various ends of the earth, most of them to their deaths, for a joke, for a lie, what is it?
For their cult. Of course, a lot of the stories of the deaths of the apostles are not backed up with anything. Some of them are just stories too, but assuming they're all true, yeah, they died for their cult. That's how these things work. It plays out over and over again all over the fucking world. And for some reason, nobody ever seems to get the point.
The endurance of the church throughout the ages.
Isn't that basically just the spread of Christianity point again? At least pretty close to it.
The identification of our Lord with the divine logic of the universe, which is why the whole thing makes sense.
So one of the reasons you know your religion is true is because your religion has a religious idea. What?
That would be evidence.
Is it possible, and I know you're not going to think this is possible, but is it possible that the reason that you think this evidence is good is because you already believed without evidence, that you already believed on faith, but you want to have something to present to other people so you can pretend like your beliefs are based on some kind of evaluation of evidence because that's respected nowadays? Just a thought.
That would be evidence.
Now, who can argue with that?
Anyone. That was dog shit.
So, yeah, it's true. It's true, Richard Dawkins. If my aunt had cojones, she would be my uncle. But that's why we have to start with correct premises about the very terms that we're discussing.
Oh, right. We were talking about what the word faith means. I almost forgot because you spent so much time rattling off garbage arguments for Christianity. But so yeah, the part about faith came down to just backing up everything Dawkins said, but in different words.
Next one.
Next what? Oh, wait a second. The next TikTok. I forgot this video was called Michael Reacts to Atheist TikToks. We have almost no time left in this video. All you've done so far is argue with that one Dawkins clip. I forgot this was supposed to be a multiple TikTok thing.
God's necessary for morality, as you said?
Yes.
Okay. World A baby is thrown off a building, and God exists in that world. Okay? Did something wrong happen?
Yes.
Great. World B. A baby's thrown off a building, and there's no God in that world. Did something wrong happen?
You throw a baby off a cliff is wrong, no matter what.
Okay, so God isn't necessary for morality then? That seems like the quickest debunk of a point I think I've ever had on the show.
Okay, not exactly a serious argument, but the guy on the call did walk right into that trap. What he should have said is, if there's no God, there's no definition of objective morality, and therefore no, nothing objectively wrong happened. But I still feel like it's wrong because I live in a universe with God and with objective morality. But he didn't pay attention, so ha ha ha, guy wasn't paying attention, gets flicked in the nose. Nothing too special.
Are you serious? Man, quit playing with me, man. No, for real, don't play like that.
At this point, I don't even need to say anything about that. I think my feelings are abundantly clear.
There's no world in which there are babies if God does not exist.
Yeah, that could have been part of the guy's answer too, but you still have to be able to entertain hypotheticals.
There's no world in which speech is intelligible if God does not exist.
Excuse me, atheists are the ones who are supposed to wear the fedoras, milady.
There's no world in which there are podcasts that can be understood if God does not exist.
What do podcasts have to do with the argument those two were having? Now you're just bringing up random things.
There is no reason to trust the reliability of our faculties of reason. That's the issue.
No, it's not. That is in no way the issue. That has nothing to do with the TikTok you just watched. Have you forgotten what you were talking about already?
But the reason it's wrong is because there is a moral order if God does not exist.
Sorry, I think I misheard something. Can you repeat that for me just once?
But the reason it's wrong is because there is a moral order if God does not exist.
It's wrong because there is a moral order if God does not exist. Okay, so I take it you're not a proponent of the moral argument for God then. I don't know if I've ever heard that from a Christian. Non-theistic objective morality.
And the moral order was created by God, who does exist, whether the atheists want him to or not.
Well, no, you just said if there's no God, there's still a moral order. I get it if you're saying our moral order was created by God, but even so, even if there's no God to create a moral order, there's still a moral order, and therefore in a godless universe, it is still wrong to do whatever the guy said that was the bad thing. It's really weird the way you're approaching this. It's almost like you're trying to find some way to make the guy on the phone be right, but also say that the only objective morality is in a universe with a God. That's a guess anyway. All I can do is guess here because it's hard to figure out where your mind is at on this.
That's the issue.
Well, no, again, it's not. The issue that was under discussion was not, did God create the moral order? It's that, would you still say the same action was objectively wrong in a universe that was not created by a God? It's not an unrelated issue, it's just not the same one. That's it? That's all we're getting? What, were you too flustered from the Dawkins thing to give this one a proper response? Alright, that's it for that. Very, very lame. In the arguments, yeah, but I mean just mainly in the way the video was put together. Almost intolerable just to watch. Well, thanks for enduring that with me. If you would, before you go, please do give the video a like and click subscribe if you haven't. And if you like the channel, maybe consider supporting. A couple of bucks per video or per month is enormously helpful, and huge thanks to all of my supporters who've already made that choice. Early access, email list, list.logicked.com, and I'll see you next time.